I'm still not convinced that this 20 valve 1.8T engine we've been working on wasn't recovered directly from the bottom of the ocean. If you haven't figured it out yet, we are building a mock-up R&D engine for a couple of performance products that I'm working on behind the scenes. In the last video, we played around with a couple of finish options for the raw aluminum, but I think in today's video, we're gonna have to address the elephant in the room, the big, brown, crusty elephant. So sit back, relax, and enjoy, because once again, I have a banger for you guys today. So I will be 100% honest with you guys. I don't know if I'm too particularly happy with that finish on this. I think it's a little dull. I know it's paint, but I think it's a little bit fake looking. I think we're gonna do another test here. So this piece is probably the best raw aluminum piece after the sandblasting that turned out. And as you guys know, I plan on fully acrylic clear coating this entire build once it's done, just to seal it up and make sure that it looks exactly how it did the day that I finished it in the future. So here's the faux aluminum, and here's the actual raw aluminum. It probably doesn't come across quite as much on the camera, but this clearly you can tell is much different from this in person. So what I wanna do is I wanna shoot both of these with some clear and see which one's final finish I'm happier with. Obviously, if we go with a completely raw aluminum, we're gonna have to do a little bit better job on the other pieces, getting them cleaned up in order to match the ones that came out really nice. However, I do think I have a solution to make it easier to spray these as well as that block when it comes down to it. But we'll save that for later. Anyways, let's go ahead and shoot both of these pieces with clear and see what kind of finish we're gonna get with either of them. So then, let's get to work. As per usual, remember to always wipe down your parts with grease and wax remover before spraying them. I'm going to be doing 2 light coats and 1 final heavier coat to both of these parts, leaving roughly 10 minutes of flash off time in between. Believe it or not, after these 2 pieces are clear coated, I think I actually prefer the faux aluminum look than the actual aluminum look with the clear coat. For some reason, the clear coat I was using made this super dark. I don't know if it comes across on camera or not, but this now looks more like aluminum than the actual raw aluminum does. So that's actually pretty good news. So now that we know what the plan is with the aluminum stuff, now we got to figure out what the plan is with the block. As you can see, this thing needs quite a bit of love. As you saw in previous videos when we did the test spray, that block does in fact fit in this sandblaster. However, it's probably going to be pretty dang difficult to get it sprayed, at least to my satisfaction, in here, because that block does 100% need to be perfect. Unlike the aluminum stuff, if there's any rusty or corroded areas left over after sandblasting, once we paint this thing, it is going to show up no matter what we do. Even if we clear coat over it, the rust is always going to come back through. So I think instead of putting this into the sandblasting cabinet and having a pretty difficult time getting all the areas nice and clean, I've devised a plan. And you know what? If this plan doesn't end up working out, we actually have a guy down the road that will spray this block for us at a pretty reasonable price. But I would like to test out my theory here and see if we can go ahead and spray this thing a little bit cheaper than what he's going to charge me. Yes, that's right. we're attempting to make ourselves a makeshift outdoor sandblasting booth. Since our sandblasting gun is mobile already, I thought just sticking it in a small pail of our glass bead media would suffice. But unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. So that worked a lot better in my head than it did in practice. As you can see, we hit a couple spots and got them cleaned up a little bit better on this cover. But the amount of mess that I thought was going to be contained that wasn't, and the amount of sandblasting media we're going to end up going through doing it that way, I just don't think it's going to be any cheaper to do it ourselves and spend all that time and money versus just sending it out to a dedicated sandblasting place and getting this thing blasted. So I think that's what we're going to do. The block is going to get sent out. The rest of this stuff we're hopefully going to be able to do in the sandblasting cabinet still. I think we're just going to have to go ahead and pick up a new piece of plexi for this cabinet, because as you can see, we can't see, and that's a pretty big problem when you're spraying things and wanting to make them picture perfect. Let's go ahead and get this block loaded up so we can take it over to the sandblaster. Now, we actually ended up getting the block back from the sandblasters yesterday. I just didn't have enough time, unfortunately, to seal it up right away, which normally isn't a huge deal. As long as you seal it up nice and keep it away from moisture, you're usually okay for a couple days. And as you can see, I have it sealed up in a bag right now to keep moisture out. I've also got a couple of those little silicone packets inside of there to absorb any moisture that gets in. The only problem is, this is the weather we're dealing with today. Super foggy, lots of moisture in the air, and really warm. I think it went from about -2 yesterday to about +10 here this morning. So that major change in temperature usually promotes moisture, especially in a shop environment like this. Luckily, because of how well insulated this shop is, you can see we're still sitting at about 0 degrees. So that might save us. But with that being said, let's go ahead and unwrap this thing. I haven't looked at it today, so I don't know how it's gonna look. Hopefully, we're good to go, but we're gonna find out together. So let's get this thing unwrapped, and we'll cross our fingers, our toes, and everything else on our body that this thing isn't rusty already. All right, guys. Here goes nothing. Well, guys, as you can see, this sucker has already started to kind of flash rust in a couple of areas, which is no bueno. Definitely should have sealed this thing up yesterday when I got it here. Unfortunately, the blaster that it was at actually uses an outdoor bay, and it was kind of misting yesterday already. So either way, I don't think this thing had the best chance in the world to be perfect. No fault to the blaster. He did call me and say, hey, do you want me to blast this thing? It's kind of raining. And I said, go ahead with it. And he warned me of this right here. Luckily, what I have found works really, really good with the engine paint that I'm going to be using for this is to use, instead of a primer, is to use a base of rust converter before the engine paint goes down. Hopefully that's going to take care of most of the flash rusting and prevent it from coming back through in 5 to 10 years or whenever. Luckily, this is just a mock-up engine. It's not going to go through any heat cycles, so this paint should last a lot longer than if it were to run and get hot and cold and hot and cold, etc. So let's get this thing propped up and seal it up and paint it before we get any more of this cruddy crud coming in here. I've just got this thing propped up on a sawhorse here. I think this is gonna be the best way to spray it. We're gonna get the optimal angle. And then I also want to make sure that there's good coverage on all the edges, especially the top and the bottom, because I haven't decided yet what the plan is for the places that say the head doesn't sit on, as well as the oil pan and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna blast everything right now. And then eventually down the road, if I want to have like a machined type finish on the spots that don't get covered up by the head, then we can do that. But I want to make sure this thing is sealed up nice and good so it doesn't rust anymore. First step is let's hit this with some compressed air and make sure we get all of the sandblasting debris off of this engine and make sure it's ready to go once we start shooting. All right, now that that is all blown off and clean, I'm gonna go ahead and wipe the deck on this thing, and we're gonna just kind of tape an area here so that we can have a nice hard tape line and protect the inside of the cylinders from starting to flash rust. We don't really care if that ends up happening. We just want to make sure that this thing doesn't rust from here out and then affect the paint that we're going to throw on here. Once again, we're just using some grease and wax remover here, or Prep-All, I guess a lot of people call it. So we're just gonna give this a good wipe, let it flash off. I'm actually gonna go over a couple of spots on the outside of the block too that don't look that great. Go ahead and lay down some of our masking tape here. This block is pretty cold right now, so tape isn't going to stick the best to it, but now before I run a razor blade across this deck to give us a nice even cut, I will remind you guys, this is a mock-up engine. Do not do this when masking off your engine if you plan on having it run afterwards. All right, now that that is all masked up, let's go ahead and hit it with some rust converter. So basically all that this stuff does is exactly what it sounds like. So through a chemical process, it takes the rust on the iron block and converts it to a metal that isn't going to continue to rust. Don't ask me what it is. Don't ask me how it works. I'm just a muckanuck. I have no idea the chemistry behind this, but I know that I've used it in the past and it's worked well. Even for blocks that aren't sandblasted and even blocks that go through the heat cycles, this stuff has worked really good as a base to the paint that I'm gonna be spraying it with. So let's hit this sucker up. As you can see, the rust converter has already started kind of doing its job, changing these flash rust areas from the brown color of rust, obviously, to kind of this dark black / purplish hue. And that's good, that's what you wanna see. We gotta let this stuff cure, and then we can go ahead and throw down our paint. And now is once again the time we have switched to black and white, because I don't want to spoil the color that we're shooting this block just yet until it is completely finished. But let's go ahead and lay down a couple of layers of engine enamel. In this case, we're using the ceramic Duplicolor. Again, I'm gonna do a couple of light coats and then finish with one heavier coat on this sucker. So let's get after it. A few coats of paint later, and I'm not gonna lie guys, this thing turned out absolutely perfect. I think this color choice was 100% the move for this block. But unfortunately, The color reveal, I think I'm gonna save till the next video. So if you wanna see what color we went with on this block, go ahead and click that subscribe button so you don't miss my next upload or any of the other uploads in the future. Go ahead and leave me a comment down below with what color you think I went with this block. The only hint I'm gonna give you is it's looking pretty factory fresh. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.